Well, welcome everybody to another edition of Last Christian. My name is J.D. Williams here in beautiful East Texas. And unlike usual, when we're talking to New York City, today I have the extreme honor and privilege of welcoming in our guest host for today, and also the KRRB official UK consultant. I call you my senior consultant, Mark. Mr. Mark Sutherland over there in the UK. How's things going across the pond there, Mark?
Well, I'm very well. I can't say that about the rest of the country and various other issues that are going on. But JD, what a privilege it is to join you and to co-host. And I don't think I can fill the wonderful shoes of David Paxton, a dear friend, but I will certainly have a go. And thank you very much for your kind introduction.
Well, Mark, as I said, it's a privilege for me to have you here. And it's also timely that we have you here because the way things are going in the world right now, I see the end times playing out right before us, and that's the reason for the title of today's show, Antichrist. Does he walk among us today? Well, I have an opinion on that, and I think that you probably have an opinion on that too, and we're going to get there. We're going to talk about it, but we're going to do that by talking about what's going on in the world right now. And, of course, you know that we have all kinds of issues here in the United States with anti-Semitism for the first time in our nation's history, really. I mean, I'm sure there's anti-Semites in the United States, always have been, but they've always been in a huge minority. And I do mean a huge minority, to the point that nobody even wanted to worry about it. And now it seems like every college, a major college in the United States of America, is pro-Hamas and anti-Israel, and that speaks very badly for the future of the United States. And I don't think anything is any better in the UK, is it?
No, it's not, JD. And your comment is absolutely right and very, very timely. I think it was illustrated. It's illustrated by the fact that we are now seeing these university encampments over here. And my first comment, and you and I, we watch the news. We're not sitting here being clever in many ways, but we are watching the news, trying to pressy, as we call it. We're trying to assess what's going on.
Right.
And of course, as we know, people are not telling the truth. They're not getting facts out there. What is very interesting is that our ex-Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, and I actually call her a brave woman, and the fact that when she was Home Secretary and she was sacked by our Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, is that she began to call out these marches, these pro-Hamas marches, which I find I am fed up with them, and I find that they are full of, personally, I think they're full of hatred, and there are bigger things that are going on here. And she went to visit one of our top universities with a TV crew from the channel GB News, and she went there to engage with the students to find out what their opinions are, why they are, what they've got to say about the situation in Israel. Will they call Hamas a terrorist organization, etc., etc. And she was met with a wall of silence of young people with masks on that would not talk to her, would not talk to the presenter, Patrick Christie. And it's really, really important that we reference where this news is coming from. Otherwise, that doesn't make us good journalists or good people as commentators. So she went there, and it was in many ways it was an absolute confirmation. Then you have to wonder: are these people agitators that have been, as you know, within America, where you call it, they've been bussed in? Have they come in from other areas? And that's a question. And then, as Patrick Christie raised a thought to say, how many members of the Communist Party are these young people? Now, to their credit, they didn't get any answer from anyone on the ground there, but a young person then said, "I'll come on the program, and I will get into conversation with Suella Braverman and give our viewpoint, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what happened. So this young lady came on who basically, I just thought, you're an utter Marxist with what you're coming out with, would not answer the question, does not know anything about history, and Israel this week has celebrated its 76th year of
Amen.
declaring independence on the 14th of May 1948. So this young lady was coming out with stuff that was just not true. The usual thing of saying, they're committing genocide in Gaza. And let's just note this, that the United Nations this week have downgraded the amount of people let's publicly say this, any death on both sides is deeply, deeply regrettable. But Hamas uses the civilians within Gaza as shields. It hides behind them. And personally, with their behavior, it doesn't care anything about them. Now, at some point in conversation, it would be wonderful to try and explain some of that in regard to, and I will look it up, in regard to another recent wonderful interview this week that had been undertaken by the two Jewish boys, a fantastic podcast. We're trying to get this knowledge. We're trying to understand the psychology of what is actually going on here. So the UN have then downgraded virtually 49%, if not half, of the actual figures that they were given. So the figures of death between 32 and 35,000 civilians within Gaza, they're saying, that have died. And they give these figures where it seems to list only women and children. It doesn't seem to list men. And of course, it doesn't list the amount of terrorist fighters, the amount of Hamas terrorists that have actually been killed. It doesn't list any of that at all. So they've downgraded this week. Now, you know as well as I do, the amount of times on mainstream media those figures have been given, as if they are absolute fact. And of course, people have been, though some of us who were in this position have been combating that, have been questioning that, and saying that these figures are not true. And it goes back to the accusation, and we have to go back here because people are still not apologizing for this. These people that tweeted this is disgusting or whatever, they still haven't taken those tweets down or apologized. So when you look at when Israel was accused of firing, of bombing the Shifa hospital and killing 500 Palestinians, and then people that are living in Gaza, because the whole word of Palestinian is another interesting history, because up until 1967 they were not called Palestinians, they are Arabs that are living within Gaza.
Well, hang on one second, Mark. Hang on one second, because there's a couple of points I want to go over with you here real quick. First of all, you're talking about they haven't backed down. Well, actually what they've done is they've doubled down. They keep talking about it. Okay, it's not like they're backing up and backing off or trying to say, oops, we made an error. Instead, it is all in. We're all in on this. And one of the directors here, Meathead, what's his name, Rob Reinert, he said that, these protests are what need to happen. That, that they have every right to take over these buildings. That they were protesting just like they did in Vietnam. No, I don't remember the people protesting in Vietnam, which is part of my generation. I do not remember that type of thing going on. The police, the response was probably a lot tougher back then in the 60s than the absolute non-response that they're getting today, and pushing over police and that type of thing. Now, another thing here, Nazi comparisons. Now, I have stayed away from Nazi comparisons to the best of my ability. I brought it up, I think, a show or two ago, because it's getting to that point. But just yesterday, I heard that the Biden administration had actually released a new ad. Now, this is not necessarily President Biden himself. I want to make this clear. This is probably one of these outfits that takes money, okay? But they produced the ad, and I'm not seeing Biden complaining about it, in which they are making a direct comparison between Donald Trump and Adolf Hitler. Now then, they list a couple of things when they do that, and they say that, well, they fight for, all the media was supporting Adolf Hitler. Well, all the media is supporting who? Donald Trump or Joe Biden? Well, the answer is clear, Joe Biden, okay? New regulations, all regulations, strong regulations against this and against that. Who did that? Adolf Hitler. Well, who did that here? Well, it's Joe Biden. Donald Trump tries to open things up, tries to free up things, and Biden tries to tell us that we listen to the government, and if we are an outside voice, that we are to be canceled. That's a fact. Look it up. I'm a member of the U.S. Press Association. I can speak to fact, and if you don't like them, I'm sorry. But you can't have it both ways. Joe Biden is an incompetent idiot, in my personal opinion, who is still trying to run for president because Jill Biden tells him to, because she wants the attention on herself. She doesn't care about him. If she did, she would sit him down somewhere and get the man some senior care. Again, my personal opinion. But it's now, Mark, it's coming to the point where it looks like the Democrats are seriously considering not running Joe Biden, and to me, that is even a scarier proposition. I'll let you take it from there.
It is appalling, because we've reached a point where people cannot have a debate. They cannot come to the center ground to have a debate. It's right. Turning around and saying, "Oh, well, you are a fascist, you're an extremist, and all the rest." But you know as well as I do that if you draw that circle, when you're turning around and when they're making, comparisons to Hitler, National Socialist Workers' Party. The clue is in the second word of socialist. Amen. And it's this whole thing of the means of production, where it's blatant or hidden. What I mean by that, within a communist setup, they're turning the means of production seems obvious because the state is obviously running everything, and actually running everything appallingly. Right. But also within the German system, there were private companies that worked for the Germans, but they were members of the Nazi Party. And it's how history is taught. And when you follow Biden's career, and I was listening to an interview of Alan Dershowitz. So I just need to say something where he is making, as a defender of Israel, quite rightly, because of his Jewish heritage, and his Jewish heritage that I think comes out of the USSR. Now, he is, as he said on an interview with recently on trigonometry, he is saying, I am a Democrat. I voted Democrat all my life, and I am a Biden supporter, and I like Joe Biden. And I was listening to this. I have, I don't want to do the man a disservice. There are many, many things I disagree with him on. But like all of us, there's the challenge about our blind spots. And Alan Dershowitz, I just feel, has a very, very huge blind spot, because if you go through Biden's career, whether that's being best friends with someone, one of the leaders of the KKK and all of this kind of thing, and then you go through his career and there he is lying, saying, when I was studying law, I was number one in my class, basically. No, you weren't. Right. There is a long list of things, and also copying a speech from our Member of Parliament, Neil Kinnock. And also we have to remember, and here's an important thing, and this was wonderfully pointed out by Brendan O'Neill on the Spike, who writes for Spike, editor, boss of Spike over here, and goes around the world, and Brendan is superb. And an interview that he had just recently done over here with young Ollie of JVTV, and young Ollie as a young Jewish man, just getting the truth out there. Brendan was pointing out that this disconnect of people forgetting people's past, and there is Biden now saying we're going to withhold bombs, etc., from Israel. But as Brendan pointed out, look about what they did in Afghanistan, and that they would be bombing civilians in Afghanistan that might be attending a wedding or a party, etc., etc., and there are NATO bombs falling. And this is when Obama was president, and Biden, of course, was vice president. So
Right.
we've got to remember that. And I think one of the other things that Brendan wonderfully pointed out here, and is that our own country in regard to our own attitude at the moment. And that's why, and you referred to this at the beginning, JD, and as Genesis 12 points out, if you bless my people, I will bless you. If you curse my people, I will curse you.
Right.
I am deeply concerned about how the attitude that our country has towards Israel at the moment, as American politicians do. And there are many, many people in America that stand shoulder to shoulder with Israel. There are many people over here that stand shoulder to shoulder with Israel. And the Eurovision Song Contest, we could talk about that, maybe come back to that, that showed in the public vote, there were many, many people in this country that voted to support Israel. And I'll just end this just quickly, this little segment in this sense. David Cameron, our then Foreign Secretary, who is not an elected member of Parliament, was brought back as Foreign Secretary by then making him a Lord in the House of Lords. We have a two-party system in the House of Lords as checks and balances, supposedly, even though I think it's been rammed full of a bunch of left-wing socialists and con-socialists, as we call them in regard to conservative. This is the man that led the way for NATO to then bomb Libya. Now, whatever people think of Colonel Gaddafi, there is an interesting story to say there. But turn that country into utter chaos. And Gaddafi once said, he said that if you get rid of me, you will see a mass influx of immigration from North Africa. And he was absolutely right.
Correct. Yeah.
And Cameron is now back as Foreign Secretary. And I just feel that, as a dear friend of mine says, God is weighing up the scales every day, every week, and how our countries are reaction. And suddenly, and I'll give Cameron his due, he then goes on the BBC, says to one of their top reporter, Laura Koonsberg, the BBC needs to name Hamas as a terrorist organization. It won't officially do that. So this is what's going on. That's why you quite rightly are fearful of how our Almighty God is viewing America, and I am very fearful of how our Almighty God is viewing the UK, and I don't think he's very impressed.
No, I don't either. And the United States is right there on it. We're teetering. From what I understand, there's some kickback now from both parties here toward Biden and his Israel policy, and I hope that takes hold, and I hope that he reverses his trend, because it seems to be that he's trying to push us away from Israel, and that would be the death blow for America, in my opinion. Now, I'm going to play a couple of clips here, and this is going to be Israel, and strictly Israel today. And the first one I'm going to play is the fact that we do have aid now that is getting in there via the United States. This is a little bit of an expensive way to do it and kind of a stupid way to do it, but anyway, here we go.
The US has confirmed that the first aid shipments have arrived into Gaza via a temporary floating pier. Israel is defending its military offensive in Rafah at the International Court of Justice. Friday's hearing comes a day after South Africa told the top UN court that Israel was seeking to reduce Gaza to rubble. According to the United Nations, roughly 600,000 people have been forced to flee Rafah since May the 6th. William Denslow reports from The Hague, where the ICJ is located.
Israel's delegation told the court they're engaged in a tragic armed conflict in Gaza, but firmly rejected claims of genocide. On Thursday, South Africa urged the ICJ to order Israel to cease its offensive in Rafah. Israel says doing so would embolden Hamas and hamper efforts of rescuing hostages taken in the October 7th attack. Back in December, Pretoria took its case to the top UN court, accusing Israel of committing genocide in Gaza. Israel says South Africa is acting as the legal arm of Hamas and operates within the confines of international law. William Denslow, The Hague.
Okay, so you can see there that, anything the Palestinians do is, like, if they shoot something at Israel, they don't care where it hits. If it hits civilians, good. They like that. If it hits the military, well, they just got lucky with that one. But my point is they just shoot. They don't care where it lands. Israel is pinpoint. And the only thing that the United States has withheld from them militarily is the ability to pinpoint. So, in other words, the United States says, we don't want you doing genocide. We don't want you to do that, even though you're only hitting terrorists. So we're going to take away your ability to use smart bombs. Now you've got to just shoot and hope you hit terrorists. That's all the United States is doing, and that is just backwards. And it's, and it's also very, very dangerous. Now, here's what I want to do for the rest of this show. I'm going to play this clip, and then we're really going to get into this. And as far as the Antichrist goes, we're going to talk about it. Because I do have a strong opinion on whether or not he is walking the earth right now. And I say he because the Bible says it's a he, not a she, not an it, but a he, okay? So anyway, let's listen to this one real quick, and then we'll get into the Antichrist discussion. Here we go.
Leaders of the 22-member Arab League are hoping to agree on a plan to end the conflict between Hamas and Israel at a summit in Bahrain. Confidence is said to be high that a plan with all members in agreement will be the outcome, as Stuart Smith reports from Baghdad.
Officials say a concrete timetable for a ceasefire in Gaza will be proposed, as well as an initiative to rebuild the Gaza Strip and other areas affected by the war. A peace conference will be planned, one which Bahrain will lead as the country hosting this year's summit. Over the next few months, it would push for Palestine to be recognized as a state, perhaps in return for all Arab nations recognizing Israel as a state for the first time too. That would come with the condition that Hamas be stripped of all authority in Gaza and governance there handed over to the Palestinian Authority. It comes after 143 members of the United Nations voted that Palestine should be granted full membership privileges. Stuart Smith, Baghdad.
All right, so now this peace plan that you just heard there is not one that was presented by Israel. It is not one that is presented by Hamas. It is a plan that is being constructed by people outside of either country. And, of course, they're bending over backwards hoping that Hamas was going to accept something. And the information that I just got a few minutes ago was that Hamas has walked away from these peace talks already in order to put pressure on Israel. Now, how that puts pressure on Israel, I'm not sure. I guess that's their mindset. But anyway, we got about 4 minutes. Mark, if you want to start to comment on this, and then we're going to carry it over into the second half of the show as we unveil the Antichrist for everybody. Go ahead.
UK lawyers for Israel have, under excellent people like Natasha Horskopf, has been talking about this for a good few years, and as an organisation they've been talking about how lawfare is being weaponized to come against Israel and to then contribute to the two-state solution, which of course the then Palestine, we call them then the Palestinian people have their leaders, Arafat and all the rest, through Oslo, etc., to Bill Clinton talked about in his book, have turned down. The concern is, and this has been pointed out by people greater than me, and the two Jewish boys in a wonderful interview with a gentleman whose name has gone from me recently, who monitor the PLO television, made a brilliant, incredible point that is not made out to us, of course, about the mistake of the Oslo agreements. Because Hamas is the PLO, the teaching, the education books, etc., two young Palestinian children, has been so embedded within the school system from 1996, 1997. It's then created this death cult of martyrdom. And this gentleman pointed out that if they could actually have talked to the Palestinians individually instead of going through the PLO organization, then they might have had peace by now. What am I saying? I'm saying that the indoctrination by Hamas and how they behave of course, has grown out of fully of the education system, where these people, sadly, they have children, and the whole thing is of martyrdom. And let's just remind ourselves as well, JD, under Gaza, they have built a tunnel system that's the equivalent of the London Underground. So when people are talking about aid going in, money going in, the billions of dollars, the billions of pounds, the billions of francs, whatever, that have come in to Gaza since then, the Israelis officially leaving by, I think, 2007, they have built this network, and within a very short space of time, they turned Gaza into a rocket launch pad, and no country would put up with that. But the problem is, and you quite rightly raised this, how would we feel as countries having other countries decide, and we've got that within the European Union, decide how big our state should be and start dividing up our country and our land? We would be apoplectic.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I'm going to break in on you because we got a minute to go, and just make a couple of quick points here on the way out, and then of course we're going to get into this really heavy as far as the Antichrist. Does he walk among us today? We're going to touch on that in the second half, going into some major detail here. Number one, NATO is now saying that they are considering putting boots on the ground in the Ukraine as trainers. Well, they might want to evaluate about 1962 when the United States decided to do that in Vietnam. See how that worked out, especially since Russia said that would be a red line for them. Also, I want to talk to you in the second half about the Conservative Party in the UK, whether or not they're really conservative or if that's hiding something else going on there. And also, you were talking about tunnels in Gaza. Okay, breaking news coming here. There's 50 tunnels that have been found in Rafah, all leading to Egypt. Okay, we're going to be back for the second half of The Last Christian right after a very short break. Y'all hang in there with us. You're going to love it.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. The United States has confirmed that the first aid delivery for Gaza using the new temporary pier is now on shore. US Central Command aims to deliver approximately 500 tons of aid using the sea corridor and the floating pier over the next few days. FSN's Benji Hire reports from Washington.
This is a convoluted but desperately needed lifeline, one that could help tackle hunger in the war-torn Palestinian territory. The United Nations warns of a full-blown famine in the Strip, exacerbated by a week-long closure of the Rafah crossing with Egypt, with all other border points controlled by Israel. The goal is to get about 500 tons of assistance into the enclave per day through this maritime corridor. The pier costs $320 million, more than 1,000 American troops have been involved in the process, though there were no US military boots on the ground in Gaza itself.
Meanwhile, Israel has defended its military offensive in Rafah at the International Court of Justice. Friday's hearing comes a day after South Africa told the top UN court that Israel was seeking to reduce Gaza to rubble. FSN's William Denslow reports from The Hague, where the ICJ is located.
Israel's delegation told the court they were engaged in a tragic armed conflict in Gaza, but firmly rejected claims of genocide. On Thursday, South Africa urged the ICJ to order Israel to cease its offensive in Rafah. Israel says doing so would embolden Hamas and hamper efforts of rescuing hostages taken in the October 7th attack. Back in December, Pretoria took its case to the top UN court, accusing Israel of committing genocide in Gaza. Israel says South Africa is acting as the legal arm of Hamas and operates within the confines of international law. William Denslow, The Hague.
At least 4 people have died and nearly 800,000 homes and businesses are without power in Houston, Texas, after a fast-moving thunderstorm ripped through the city on Thursday night. The weather system is now turning east, with Louisiana and Mississippi in its deadly path. FSN's Tony Waterman has more.
Houston is now in recovery mode, cleaning up and assessing the damage after powerful thunderstorms toppled trees, shattered windows in high-rise buildings, and flattened power lines. Officials say winds closed in on 100 miles per hour, and that some twisters were reported in a storm very reminiscent of a hurricane. The Houston fire chief said 2 people were killed by falling trees and another 2 by a crane that blew over. School has been cancelled on Friday and city workers have been told to stay home.
Golf world number 1, Scotty Scheffler, has been released by police following his arrest at the US PGA Championship. He was detained after reportedly ignoring police warnings to stop his vehicle as he tried to drive around the scene of an earlier crash. From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
And welcome back, everybody, to the second half of Last Christian. Again, my name is J.D. Williams here in the United States of America. And over there in the United Kingdom is my guest host today, KRRB UK consultant, Mr. Mark Sutherland. Again, Mark, thank you so much for being on the show today. And I want to go back for just a minute before we get into the Antichrist and ask you, because in the last show, David and I spoke a little bit about the Conservative Party was losing support in the United Kingdom. And when I hear conservative, I'm thinking Trump, I'm thinking, Reagan and all this kind of stuff. And is that what the Conservative Party is in the UK, or are they more far left than conservative really should be? Tell me, I don't know. It is an honest question.
No, they're not conservative, period. There might be 1 or 2 within there that are conservative. Someone greater than me came up with a wonderful meme for that, calls them con socialists. Okay. They are conning us. They are liberals. They're like
How about Labour?
Democrats.
How about Labour?
Sure. Yeah, well, Labour are socialists, if not got members that are within it that have extreme left-wing views, if not communist views.
So you're looking at, and I'm really interested in this because the United Kingdom is so close to the United States of America. And the way you're making it sound is that you got a liberal party, or, a liberal party, and then you got a leftist out the door, crazy AOC kind of party. No conservative choices there, or what?
No, there aren't any conservative choices. That is why there is a third party that is really trying to grow itself at the moment, called Reform UK. You will know someone called Nigel Farage. Farage, who's is chairman of it, is then not sort of supposedly politically upfront over that. And then you've got people like leaders like Richard Tice and Ben Habib as deputy of the party. However, what you've got incredibly is up and down this country and in all the separate constituents, as we call it, all the separate areas where you then have a member of parliament, there is the wonderful and British citizens that are stepping forward to stand for the party, and they don't have political experience, but they are conservative, and many of them, some of them I've recently having the privilege to interview on my podcast. Their journey as well has been through people like Tony Blair. It's been through a left-wing mindset to go through Brexit, to realise that we haven't officially fully left the EU, and that we've got this group of people within government that have stopped that, even though in 2019, Boris Johnson has voted in on a platform of saying we will get Brexit done. No, in a nutshell, no, and that's why the bottom line is this, JD. I believe that we are in the last days. I don't know where we are in regard to that timeline, but I do see biblical prophecy unfolding. Of that, there is no question. Now,
of that there is no question, and which is exactly what we're going to get into. Because
and this is why,
I'm going to run through some news items real quick. Okay?
Oh, yep.
And now, this is just right off the top. This is today, by the way. This is a news reporting from all over the world condensed. You've got Russia is opening a new front in the northeast, and they're saying that the Ukraine troops are outnumbered in that area, that they say that Russia is making a buffer zone to protect its people. Also, you've got Chinese Mr. Xi, and also Vladimir Putin. Xi is not a very emotional guy. He's kind of standoffish, and he hugged Putin twice, okay, and said that their relationship is very, very close, and is basically blaming the United States for any kind of problems in the region, period. Israeli forces are battling hard in Hamas right now, and that they have retrieved 3 hostages that were taken on October the 7th, that as of today. Also, this week, the United States says it's working to get trapped doctors out of Gaza. And let's see here, Donald Trump, everybody wants to know about him. It looks as though his major, the guy that, what's his name, Michael Cohen, got up on the stand and did his normal lie thing. And even so, I still don't think Trump's going to get a fair trial in New York. But they have agreed to at least 2 debates. Trump says he's agreed up to 4. Biden can't handle that. And let's see. That looks like about it as far as anything that's going on right now. But what is going on right now that is of importance to us is the fact that you've got, like, this gentleman, he happened to be a professional football player, kicker for the Kansas City Chiefs. He's a 2-time Super Bowl champion. And he spoke at the commencement ceremony of a college he attended. And he made a statement that seems so benign to me that I don't understand the fuss. He said, a lot of the women here are probably more interested in being a good wife and a good mother than they are in their career. And oh boy, did the left lose it over that. They even wanted him fired. Okay? Some are calling him mentally ill because he expressed Christian beliefs. So they're coming after the Jews right now. Okay? It's all anti-Semitism worldwide. I promise you they're coming after the Christians next because the Bible tells me that they will. And I'm seeing all this stuff happening, Mark, as far as you got all kinds of natural disasters. By the way, the United States has been hit with a bunch of them in the last 2 weeks. Coincidence? I don't think so. Anyway, you got natural disasters going on. You got pestilence. We've been through COVID. Now they're warning us about bird flu or something else that they can do, I guess. It's all coming together exactly the way the Bible says it would. War and rumors of war in Israel. Everything that, a preacher told me one time that if it doesn't affect Israel, it doesn't count. Well, everything I just talked about affects Israel. Every bit of it. Okay? And this is the first time in history. So my point here is it possible that the Antichrist is alive right now? And my personal answer, I'm going to give it to you right now. My personal answer, yep, he's walking this earth right now. No, we don't know who he is. I can't name him. That doesn't mean anything. Nobody knew who Jesus was till he was, 33? So the guy's here, in my opinion. Personal opinion. I want to make that clear. I'm not reporting that as a news item. I'm not reporting that as a fact. I'm telling you it's my personal opinion that the Antichrist is alive and well and walking the earth right now. And we may or may not even know him as far as being somebody of that people would care about, that would want to know him. I'll leave it up to you. Wherever you want to go, Mark, it's all yours.
I don't disagree at all, JD. And, we've just said it. We believe we are in the end times. We're not date setters, but we do know that the Lord Jesus is returning. That's
Right.
it. Scripture makes this very plain.
Mhm.
But as we look through history, and of course, the straight away we've mentioned Adolf Hitler as a form of antichrist. There have been other people that have
Many.
displayed that, those symptoms, if we use that word.
Right.
Also, you've made a very, very important point about they go for the Jews first and then the Christians. And as people have said, they use that expression that the Jewish people, they are the canary in the coal mine.
Amen.
And people have commented on this, which is that you then see the strength or the morality of a civilization in how it actually then treats the Jewish people.
Mhm.
So let's just make a comment on that on the 7th of October, we look at the appalling atrocities that went on. 1,300 Israelis are then killed and 246 hostages taken.
Hang on 1 second, and please don't lose your thought there. But people hear those numbers and they say, "Oh well, the Trade Center was 2,000 and something." I apologize for not knowing that number. That's on me. But in this particular case, you've got to look under percentages, and I think if you break that down, the Israeli percentage was 15%, 20%, or more of the population hit by this. I mean, it was it was a heavy number. And you got to remember all of the millions that were killed in the Holocaust, and the Jews are not going to put up with that again. They're just not, and you wouldn't either if you lived there. They're going into Rafah. They're going to take care of the people that attacked them. Good for them. I hope they kill every one of them. Okay, with that said, I'm sorry for interrupting you. Go ahead, Mark.
Not at all, because you are a population of about 330 million legal. The illegals is another one on top of that.
Right.
And then if you look at the population of Israel, which I think is 9 million people.
Mm-hmm.
So you are right in regard to percentages, and we haven't even mentioned the amount of Israelis were then injured. And 3 dear friends of mine have recently just returned from Israel and going to visit the memorial to the festival where many young people were killed. They've just found three bodies of those people that were young people that were sadly taken and killed as hostages in Gaza. These are the things that are going on. This appalling, disgusting behavior. But you make a very important point, because the civilization of the canary in the coal mine, and then we go through century after century. In 1929, there was then a pogrom within the Holy Land area, then pre-Israel as a nation. And as you raise the point, of course, now they're in a position to then defend themselves. And you've made a very, very good point earlier of they are doing their utmost to avoid unnecessary deaths within the civilization, and by cutting down the percentage, by halving the number, and people like I think it's John Spence of West Point, an urban fighting expert, who has said that the figures of civilian in regard to military is incredible what Israel, and I'm sorry that we're even having to discuss it in these terms, but what Israel is doing. Any death is appalling, and I've we've just seen Israeli soldiers, 4 or 5 of them killed as 19, because Hamas has gone back into northern Gaza as the Israeli military retreated, and they've booby-trapped buildings and all the rest. And this raises, there is a political fight, there is a principality and fight within the political system in Israel, in actually, the longer people like America and other people turn around and say, we're not going to give you these weapons, it just keeps dragging this out. And really sadly, and friends of mine have just witnessed this, that you see that the military cemetery in Israel, there are all these young, brave IDF soldiers of 1920 who are then dying. In regard to coming back to an antichrist figure, I don't disagree. We are seeing things hot up, and it is so important that we get our our facts right. But it
Well,
is dictated by. I was
let
going to
me.
say it is dictated by the whole of world history
Yeah.
revolves around that nation. Sorry,
Let
JD.
me. No, you're fine. I just wanted to get in here real quick and say that, that report that I played earlier, I'm kind of wondering who put that together. Now, I'm not saying that the guy's an antichrist or is the antichrist. I'm not saying that at all. However, when you look at the wording of that, it appears to be something that if it was presented by a sweet-talking, I'm going to say his name even though I don't like the man, and that's Barack Obama. If Barack Obama was to come out and say, look, here's the deal. Israel, if you will recognize a Palestinian state, in return for that, every Arab country around you, every single one of them, is going to recognize you and your right to exist. Hamas is going to be stripped of all power. They're not going to have any more power in the region. The people will now report to a completely different government. And let's even go a step further and say a democratic government. And we're now going to have peace in the Middle East. And the Palestinians agree to the deal. And the Israelis agree to the deal. That sounds a lot to me like an agreement that the Antichrist, according to the Bible, is going to make with the state of Israel. And it may be. This may be the beginning. I'm not saying that this particular agreement is it, but I'm saying something like that, worded that way, would be very, very difficult for Israel to turn down. And if all these countries actually said, yeah, we recognize Israel's right to exist, it's over, we're not going to fight you anymore. Okay? Now you got the fake peace exactly the way the Bible says it. Just a thought. What is your impression there, Mark?
Well, I think the other thing that we have to bear in mind is that what happened in the Lebanese Civil War in 1975, the reason, and before that, within Jordan, where there are Palestinian descendant Arabs that are then living. Why am I saying this? What I'm saying is that these other Arab states they could take in the Palestinian people as with people within Gaza into their countries, but they won't do that because they do not like the ideology that they're following, influenced, of course, by the Muslim Brotherhood. They are then thinking, well, if we let these people in, then we might have Hamas terrorists. I mean, I'll just quickly say this. There has been 50 members of parliament in this country in the last couple of days that have put forward that we need to be taking Palestinian refugees into this country. And I'll just say this publicly. The answer is, as far as I'm concerned, no way.
Right.
We do not know. We cannot vet anyone properly at this moment in time coming into this country. And no, thank you. So I hear you. I hear you in the fact that the United Nations, by recognizing something at the United Nations, the UK abstained from this. America voted against it, I believe. We are trying to make some kind of middle path and please everyone. Well, we should have just voted against it, period. That's it. And of course, Obama has a track record as he was just leaving and stepping down as president, and then with the UN voted in a policy that then put Israel in jeopardy at that time. That's why I referred to the UK lawyers for Israel, where they are concerned about the lawfare in regard to The Hague, where they're saying Israel is committing genocide. No, it's not committing genocide at all. And even within The Hague, that term has been misinterpreted. They've said, no, we haven't actually said that. In other words, what you are saying is that a body, you and I know the roots of it, which is the United Nations, which is a one world government orientated thinking. Amen. We cannot, over here, we do not have that kind of thought publicly in America, because of the way that you are wired, the way in regard to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and because of your roots, you discuss these things that people would call conspiracy far freer than we do, because of where you're spiritually rooted and your understanding of how your nation has been formed, which is extremely young, maybe 200 years older than is Israel itself. I'm just quickly, I can't do the maths right now.
Pretty close.
But I believe you are absolutely right that suddenly people within the whole thing of the United Nations, we remember FDR's dream, his wife's dream, her participation in the founding of that, negotiation of that. We know when the building was built by 1945. You are absolutely right, and we need to start paying attention to this, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to get in more into anti-Semitism now, because people say, well, it's all going to blow over. Eventually, there's going to be a ceasefire there and all that. And eventually all the protests in the United States will come to an end. I'm not so sure about that one. But I do want to play this one. This is over there close to you, Mark. This is over there in France. Take a listen to this.
French police have shot dead a man armed with a knife in the northern city of Rouen after he attempted to burn down a synagogue. Firefighters extinguished the blaze before it engulfed the Jewish house of worship, but there was significant damage to the building. Ross Cullen reports.
Early on Friday local time, smoke was seen rising from the synagogue and the fire brigade were called. When police arrived, the man, who had an iron bar and a knife with him, moved towards the officers, who then shot him dead. The head of Rouen Jewish community said a petrol bomb was thrown through a window to start the fire in the synagogue. This latest violence comes just a few days after gunmen shot dead 2 prison officers in an ambush at a motorway toll station south of Rouen, freeing a prisoner who is still on the run. Ross Cullen, Paris.
Now, isn't it a fact that guns are outlawed over there?
Yes.
So how did he have a gun to shoot somebody with?
Very, very good question.
Yeah. The thing is that, I've often said this, got my gun over there in the corner and hadn't shot anybody today. I don't understand. I don't understand the thought process of people that are anti-gun. Okay, and again, this is personal opinion I'm going on here, people, so don't get all bent out of shape over it, okay? But I've yet to see an argument that outdoes this one, and that is you got two stores, one on both sides of the street. One of them's got a sign that says owner has gun, will shoot. The other one says no gun-free zone. Which one's the robber going to pick? I mean, it's kind of an easy answer type of thing, but it really does play out that way. And, honestly, I would love to see police officers in my kids' school, my grandkids' school. We have custody of 2 of them. We live in a very small town, so, here you'd have everybody in town to be up there with guns if something was to go on at a school here. But I don't get the gun control argument, never have. But, that's beside the point, and you may have a completely different, and I don't want to get off onto a tangent on all this stuff.
I fully agree with you. Culturally, in the 50s and beyond, in the early 60s, that young Americans would have their guns hooked on the back of the cab of their truck,
right.
And they would drive to school.
Yeah, they sure did.
And of course, I fully stand with you, and I'll say it publicly. I wish we had that over here.
But, my whole point in this is, and this has been the argument all along, is if you take the guns away from law-abiding citizens, then the argument on the left is, well, that the criminals aren't going to carry them either. Well, I think that this report I just played in France proves that that's just not the case.
Absolutely, and you look in history about when governments have taken guns away, Adolf Hitler, Nazis being one of them, etc. So it means you then put people in a position to then not be able to defend themselves. What you're saying in France, sadly, with with other situations that have gone on in Europe, this is happening, like Charlie Hebdo shootings, etc., and other appalling things. Fires there are churches that are set on fire within
Mark,
France.
I'm going to cut you off and jump in, but only because I know that you wanted to mention something on the show today that you wanted to get across to the audience, and I want to give you that opportunity because we're down to about 4 minutes. So I want to give you an opportunity to speak to what you want to talk about today. I think we've covered the Antichrist. We believe he's here. He just isn't known to anybody yet. But I want to give you the last 4 minutes, so it's all yours.
No, it's very interesting what you were saying about Biden. I think it's very important that we remember the fact after J6 and that many people have been put in jail for this Fedsurrection. So I just want to say that to get people to go to the AmericanGulagChronicles.com and to buy the book, The Art of Confinement. And why am I saying that? The reason why I'm saying it is that we have to dig deep into looking at the history of where people have come from and these events and how they're played out, and that sadly we have got cognitive dissonance because people will not face this. The ex-Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, was in the last week, was at the Oxford Union with a debate with the wonderful ex-member of Mumford and Sons, whose name has gone from me. I think something Winston has just gone from me. But look up this debate. And there she is turning around and saying, oh, no, it was an insurrection led by a president. And as I put in a comment, I said, no, it was a Fedsurrection. And the ex-member of Mumford and Sons did a superb, brilliant job in calling her out when they are talking about popularism. And they're saying how popularism is bad. Well, popularism, if we are given this opportunity, and it all comes down to this in regard to the last days, the reason why we are focusing on Israel, because the Bible makes it very, very clear. Jesus is returning, and Jesus will be returning the Mount of Olives. He will be there. He will rule in the Millennium Kingdom they talk about that for 1,000 years. That is where his throne will be. What is not talked about in mainstream media on your side of the pond and in mainstream media on this side of the pond, this point, exactly that point. And it's not talked about that we are now engaged in the biggest spiritual battle of our lifetime. And no time in our personal history, in understanding of, what a democracy is, etc., Western civilization. Why do we call it Western civilization? Because the Ottoman armies, the Islamic armies, what they then took in regard to the land, and they pushed us out to the West. And then we are seeing this spiritual battle unfold like no other time. As Ephesians 6 says, we're not fighting flesh and blood, but principalities and powers. And this little country, the size of Israel, that is no bigger than Wales in the UK, that is no bigger than New Jersey, and it will expand because this is God's covenant to the land, to the people.
I got to cut you off, Mark. I got to cut you off. I hate to do it because you're giving a great history lesson there, but we are literally out of time. I want to again thank my guest host today, and thank you for agreeing to be my UK consultant over there. I can't tell you the value that you bring to the show, and I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for being on today, Mark. And
thank you, JD.
Until next time, everybody, we hope that you will go to church, read your Bible, and, of course, accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. Until next time, good night.
Thanks Thanks again for joining us today for the Last Christian Radio Show. And be sure to tune in every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday right here and at www.lastchristian.net. Until the trumpet sounds.
Put a frog in boiling water and it'll jump right out. But put a frog in cool water and slowly heat it up, that frog will boil. As veterans, we tell ourselves the lie that we can handle anything. We let the water boil. You are not a frog. If you or a veteran you know needs support, don't wait. Reach out. Find resources at va.gov/reach. That's va.gov/reach. Brought to you by the United States Department of Veterans Affairs and the Ad Council.